He was not talented. He was not lucky. But he practiced every single day. In the beginning, almost no one noticed him. He walked through the town quietly, keeping his eyes low. His clothes were plain, his hair always a little messy, and his smile shy. People sometimes saw him, but they did not remember his face. If they spoke to him, he gave short answers, sometimes just one word, and quickly looked away. He was not the kind of person you would think could do something amazing. He was not the fastest, the strongest, or the smartest. He could not speak English well, he could not play music, and he could not run fast or win games. But there was something inside him, a small voice telling him that life could be different. He did not know exactly how, but he knew that if he wanted change, he must do something about it. So, one cold morning, as the sun was just touching the rooftops, he made a simple choice. He decided to practice. At first, it was just 10 minutes a day. 10 minutes felt small, almost nothing. But 10 minutes turned into 20, 20 into 40, and soon it was an hour. The days became weeks, the weeks became months. Slowly, almost without noticing, his life began to change. This is the story of how practice turned an ordinary young man into someone extraordinary. When you hear his story, you may think it sounds impossible. You might say to yourself, I cannot do that. My life is different. I do not have time. I am not strong enough. But before you decide, listen carefully. He was just like you. He did not have rich parents. He did not have famous friends. He did not have a lucky break. There was no magical moment where someone discovered him. He had only one thing, a promise to himself that he would practice every single day, no matter how he felt. Sometimes he woke up tired, his body heavy like stone. Sometimes he felt sad and lonely. Sometimes he felt lazy and wanted to stay in bed all morning. But still, he practiced. In the beginning, nothing changed. There were no big results. Nobody clapped for him. Nobody said, "Good job." Sometimes he even thought, "Why am I doing this? It's useless." But then something small happened. He noticed he could understand a little more than before. He could do something a little better than yesterday. The progress was slow, but it was real. And when results finally came, they came like sunlight after a long, dark winter. They warmed his heart, they lit up his mind, and they gave him new courage. This story will show you the simple truth: you do not need talent to change your life. You do not need perfect conditions. You need practice. You can start small. You can start now. And if you keep going, you can change everything. His name was Daniel. He was 21 years old, and he lived in a small, quiet town surrounded by green hills and slow rivers. The streets were narrow, lined with old stone buildings, and everyone knew each other's faces. Daniel worked in a small bakery on the corner of the main street. Every morning, the smell of fresh bread filled the air, and the warm light from the bakery windows made the place look like something from a postcard. His job was simple: he swept the floor, served customers, and counted the money at the end of the day. From the outside, it was a peaceful life, but inside, Daniel felt restless. He had dreams that were much bigger than the town he lived in. He wanted to travel to other countries, meet people from all over the world, and study something that excited him in a big city. But there was one problem, a big one. His English was very poor. He could only say a few simple words like, "Hello, thank you," and "One moment, please." Whenever tourists came into the bakery, he would smile nervously and pray they would not ask him a question he couldn't answer. If they did, he would quickly run to the back of the shop, pretending to be busy with something else. Each time this happened, he felt a little smaller, a little weaker. The dream of seeing the world seemed far away, almost impossible. But at that time, he didn't know how to change his situation. He only knew that every day he felt the same mix of hope and frustration. Daniel grew up in a family that worked hard but never had much money. His parents loved him deeply and taught him the value of honesty and kindness, but they did not speak any English. In school, English lessons were short and not very effective. The teacher followed a strict book, reading sentences aloud for students to repeat. There were no conversations, no real practice, just lists of words to memorize. Daniel did not enjoy these classes. They felt dry and lifeless, and he could not see how they connected to real life. After each school year, he forgot most of what he learned. His grades were average, and he convinced himself that he was simply not good at languages. After finishing school, he started working full-time at the bakery to help his family. That's when he began to notice how often tourists visited his town. They would come in with cameras and maps, speaking in fast English that sounded like a song he couldn't understand. Sometimes, one of them would ask a simple question, and Daniel's mind would go completely blank. He would feel his cheeks burn with embarrassment. He wanted to help, to answer them, to be part of the conversation. But the words were trapped inside his head, locked away where he couldn't reach them. Day by day, this feeling grew heavier. One hot summer afternoon, the bakery was quiet. Daniel was standing behind the counter when a young couple entered. They were smiling, their skin tanned from travel, and they carried backpacks. They looked happy and curious. The woman asked politely, "Excuse me, could you tell us where the train station is?" Daniel heard the words, but they seemed to mix together in his mind. He caught train, but missed the rest. His heart started to race. He felt sweat on his forehead. He opened his mouth but nothing came out. The couple waited for a moment, their smiles fading slightly, and then they said, "It's okay, thank you," before leaving. Daniel stood frozen behind the counter, feeling a deep, sharp embarrassment in his chest. For the rest of the day, he kept replaying the moment in his head. That night, lying in bed, he thought, if I knew more English, I could have helped them. They would have smiled and thanked me. But I failed. The thought stayed with him for a long time. English was not just a problem at work, it followed Daniel everywhere. He wanted to take an online photography course, but the instructions and videos were all in English. He found a job posting in the city for a position that paid more than twice his current salary, but the requirements clearly said, English communication skills required. He saw events for tourists in his own town, but they were advertised only in English, so he never joined. It was like the world was full of open doors, but every door had a lock, and the key was English. He felt trapped behind glass, he could see opportunities, but he could not reach them. This feeling made him restless and frustrated. Sometimes he thought about trying to study again, but the memory of boring school lessons made him shake his head. He didn't know there was another way. The very next morning, Daniel woke up earlier than usual. The bakery did not open until 7, but he was already sitting at the small wooden table in his kitchen at 6 o'clock. His phone was in his hand, but this time, he did not scroll through social media. He opened a free English learning app he had downloaded the night before. The first lesson was simple, basic greetings, numbers, and easy sentences. Daniel already knew some of them, but he decided to repeat them carefully. "Hello, my name is Daniel," he said out loud, feeling strange talking to no one. He practiced saying it slower, then faster, then with more confidence. At first, he felt silly, but then he remembered his promise. 10 minutes passed quickly. Before leaving for work, he smiled to himself. It was only a small step, but it was a step in the right direction. That night, before bed, he practiced again. And for the first time in years, he went to sleep feeling proud of something he had done for himself. 3. In the first week, Daniel kept his promise. Every morning and every evening, he practiced. Sometimes it was 10 minutes, sometimes 15. He learned the names of common objects, the days of the week, and short questions like, "Where are you from?" and "How much is this?" He said them out loud in his small room, over and over again. He even wrote some of the words on sticky notes and put them on objects in his house. Door, chair, window. Each time he saw the word, he read it and said it. The more he repeated them, the more natural they felt. Of course, there were moments of frustration. Sometimes he forgot a word he had just learned. Sometimes his pronunciation sounded wrong. But he reminded himself, it's okay. I'm practicing. That phrase became his shield against disappointment. By the end of the week, he felt a tiny but real difference. He could remember more words, and they came to his mind faster. By the second week, Daniel realized that practice was becoming part of his daily routine. He no longer had to force himself to start, he simply expected to do it. In the mornings, he would make a cup of tea, sit at the kitchen table, and open his English notebook. In the evenings, he would listen to a short English podcast while washing the dishes. It wasn't easy to understand everything, but he caught a few words here and there. Every time he recognized a word, he smiled. He began keeping a small notebook in his pocket. Whenever he heard or saw a new English word, he would write it down. At work, if a tourist said something simple, he would listen carefully and try to remember it. Slowly, he was starting to connect the language in his lessons to the language in real life. This gave him more motivation to continue. One day, a tourist came into the bakery and asked, "Do you sell coffee to go?" This time, Daniel understood the question. He answered, "Yes, small or large." The tourist smiled and ordered. It was a short conversation, but for Daniel, it felt like a big victory. He had understood. He had answered. He had not run away. That night, he wrote about it in his notebook and drew a big star next to the words, "Coffee to go." Moments like this became fuel for his practice. He realized that even small wins could feel exciting, and they proved that his practice was working. The next day, when another tourist asked for directions to the bus station, Daniel understood most of the question. He gave a short answer, pointing toward the main street. It wasn't perfect, but it was progress. And progress felt amazing. Of course, not every day was a success. There were mornings when Daniel felt tired and his eyes were heavy. There were evenings when he was busy and had only 5 minutes to study. Sometimes he tried to watch an English video and understood almost nothing. In those moments, the old thoughts came back, maybe I'm not good at this. Maybe this is a waste of time. But then he would look at the paper on his wall with the promise written on it. Practice every day for 1 year. He told himself, I'm not perfect, but I'm not quitting. And each time he chose to continue, he felt stronger. He was starting to understand that practice was not just about skill, it was also about discipline. It was about keeping a promise to himself, even when it was difficult. After 1 month, Daniel noticed a change, not only in his English but in his confidence. At work, he no longer avoided tourists. Sometimes, he even tried to start small conversations. He learned to ask, "Where are you from?" and, "Do you like our town?" Most people were friendly and happy to talk. Even if he made mistakes, they encouraged him. One tourist from Australia told him, "Your English is good, you're improving." Those words stayed in Daniel's mind all day. He wrote them down in his notebook as a reminder. Each positive interaction made him want to practice more. It was like adding fuel to a small fire, making it grow brighter. Daniel also began to see mistakes differently. In the past, a mistake felt like proof that he was bad at English. Now, he saw mistakes as teachers. If he said something wrong and someone corrected him, he wrote the correction down immediately. If he didn't understand a question, he would politely ask, "Can you say that again, please?" and listen more carefully the second time. This simple habit of learning from mistakes helped him improve faster. He realized that mistakes were not enemies, they were part of practice. And practice, he now believed, was his strongest friend. By the 3rd month, Daniel wanted to make his practice more interesting. He started watching English movies with subtitles. At first, he only understood a few sentences, but he paused often, wrote down new words, and replayed scenes. He also joined a free online English chat group where people from different countries practiced together. Speaking to strangers was scary at first, but it became easier with time. He noticed that his listening skills were improving, and his sentences were becoming smoother. He still had a long way to go, but he was no longer afraid of the journey. Practice had now become part of Daniel's life in the same way eating and sleeping were. He didn't question it, he simply did it. 10 minutes often turned into 20, and sometimes an hour would pass without him noticing. He started keeping track of his study days with a calendar, marking each day with a big X after he practiced. Seeing a long line of X's gave him a sense of pride. It was proof that he was consistent, and consistency made him feel powerful. The old Daniel, the one who avoided tourists, was slowly disappearing. By the 6th month, the results were clear. Daniel could have short conversations with tourists without panic. He could understand signs and menus in English. He even helped a group of visitors find their way to a famous viewpoint in town, speaking in simple but correct sentences. His boss noticed and praised him in front of the other staff. Daniel felt his cheeks grow warm, not from embarrassment, but from pride. He thought back to the first day he practiced, sitting alone at his kitchen table, feeling silly and unsure. Now, he was living proof of something powerful. Practice really was changing everything. One afternoon in late summer, Daniel's boss called him to the back of the bakery. "Daniel," she said, "next week we have a big group coming. They're from Canada. They booked a tour of the bakery, and they want to hear about how we make our bread. No one else here speaks English well, so I'd like you to guide them." Daniel's heart skipped a beat. A tour? Speaking in front of a group? This was nothing like the short conversations he had been practicing. He could feel the nervousness crawling up his chest. But his boss smiled and said, "I know you've been practicing. You can do it." That night, Daniel sat at his kitchen table and began preparing. He wrote down simple sentences about the bread-making process. "We mix the flour and water, we bake the bread in a stone oven, we use local ingredients." He practiced them again and again, out loud, until his voice was steady. For the next 7 days, he rehearsed every morning and every night, determined to be ready. After the group left, Daniel went into the small storage room and sat down for a moment. He replayed the tour in his mind. He remembered the first tourist question he had ever failed to answer and compared it to what had just happened. The difference was enormous. 6 months ago, he would have run away from such a challenge. Today, he had stood tall, spoken clearly, and made people smile. And all of this was because of one thing: practice. Not talent. Not luck. Just practice, every single day, even when he didn't feel like it. It was in that quiet moment, surrounded by the smell of flour and fresh bread, that Daniel truly understood something. If practice could transform his English, it could transform anything. Here's the first lesson from Daniel's journey: small steps matter more than you think. At the start, 10 minutes a day seemed like nothing. But over time, those minutes added up to hours, and those hours built skill. You don't need to spend 5 hours a day to improve. You just need to show up every day, even for a little while. Like drops of water filling a jar, small moments of practice will eventually overflow into real change. This is something Daniel learned again and again. The tourists he spoke to, the podcasts he listened to, the sticky notes on his wall, all of them were small steps. But together, they became a road that led him to success. The third lesson is that consistency is stronger than motivation. Motivation is like the wind, it comes and goes. Some days you feel excited to practice, but other days you don't. If you only work when you feel motivated, you will stop when the feeling disappears. But if you have a routine, a promise to yourself, you keep going no matter what. Daniel practiced even when he was tired, busy, or not in the mood. That's why he improved. It wasn't magic. It was showing up again and again, like brushing your teeth or eating breakfast. You don't need to feel like doing it, you just do it. Now, I want you to imagine yourself in Daniel's place. Imagine the thing you want to be good at, maybe it's English, maybe it's drawing, maybe it's playing an instrument. Imagine how it would feel to be confident, to do it without fear, to enjoy it. That future is possible for you. But it won't come from wishing or waiting. It will come from practice. Just like Daniel, you can start small. 10 minutes a day. Every day. Don't wait for the perfect time, start now, with what you have, where you are. You don't need talent to start. Talent is a nice gift, but it's not the most important thing. If you have talent but never practice, it will disappear. If you have no talent but you practice every day, you will grow strong. Daniel is proof of that. He started with nothing, no skill, no confidence, no special teacher. But practice changed everything. And if it worked for him, it can work for you. Talent might open a door, but practice will keep it open. You don't need talent to start. Talent is a nice gift, but it's not the most important thing. If you have talent but never practice, it will disappear. If you have no talent but you practice every day, you will grow strong. Daniel is proof of that. He started with nothing, no skill, no confidence, no special teacher. But practice changed everything. And if it worked for him, it can work for you. You don't need to wait for luck. You don't need to wait for talent. You don't even need to wait for the perfect moment. All you need is to start, and to keep going. Practice changes everything. It changes your skill, your confidence, your opportunities, and your life. Daniel's story is not special because he was lucky, it's special because he decided to keep a promise to himself. You can make that promise too. Start today. Keep going tomorrow. And one day, you will look back and realize, you have changed. Not because of magic. Not because of talent. Because you practiced.